Welcome to SchezzWho, a Virginia commentary show with varyingly yours truly, Conrad Schesventer. SchezzWho is brought to you by my wife Andrea. She created the channel. She's great. She's loved. She's awesome. Sego Varner over at Positive Vibes Incorporated too. He started me on my show journey, and he's a great presence in Hampton Roads. Also, Helen's Homestyle and Barbecue with two nifty locations, one on Portsmouth Boulevard in Portsmouth and one in Indian River Road in Virginia Beach across from Regent University. Don't forget Charlie Roy at Southern Volkswagen and Greenbrier will get you a car of awesome value in this expensive time period that we're in. Connect with Charlie Roy at cschez at verizon.net. CSCHES at sign verizon.net and set up your next appointment. Now, tonight I'm going to bring in Virginia Beach voice, who is important to me and to the area, of course, as well, Victoria Luevanos. Tori has been interviewed by me before, and I'm quite happy to bring her back on. She's the official Democrat Party candidate for the new 20th state Senate seat, and she's endorsed by the Virginia Beach Progressive Caucus. So let me go ahead and bring her on right now. Ms. Tori, how are you on this Halloween night?
Tired. I feel like we're all already tired, but good.
Good. I feel, I wouldn't say energetic. I could probably go to sleep fairly easily right now, but hyped, I guess, would be how I would like to phrase it. So I have my little prepared notepad of questions here. I'd like to go, if you don't mind, a little casual Halloween-based question to start off here. Top three questions for Halloween. What's the best scary movie in your opinion?
Oh my gosh, me and my sister still have flashbacks of the first time we ever saw Jeepers Creepers. The first,
Oh, from 2001.
yeah, that one really did creep you out at first, and then they kind of ruined it when they brought the second and they showed you his face.
Isn't there a third as well?
Oh, I don't know, but
Yeah.
I just remember it was just weird.
How about this? It's a little topical because we get on the news stories on this day. Hey, don't forget, you have to be as a minimum age, actually a maximum age. Otherwise, you might get cited if you trick or treat. What's your opinion on trick or treating and age minimums and maximums?
Um, I don't know. I didn't know there was an age limit on enjoying, free things. I think a lot of us think it's a ridiculous law. I remember a few years of being here, somebody told me you got to watch out for how old your kids are, and I'm like, well, why? It's trick or treating. Why does anybody care? And they're like, yeah, there's an age limit over here, and I actually did look it up, and I saw it, and I was probably anybody who looks that up or didn't even know about it. It's a ridiculous law that we have, and as long as people are having fun and enjoying the holiday, I don't really see why bother people.
Granted, tonight's version of the Halloween is a little cooler and wetter, so hopefully a lot of the kids are still able to enjoy that tonight. But be safe, anyone watching, as you're about to go out. And last Halloween-based question: what's the best candy for Halloween?
Oh man. I personally, it's still Kit Kat for me.
This morning on my way into work, I actually had a Twix salted caramel. That's pretty good. I think Kit Kat, though, is a classic. You might see that in a bunch of trick or treat bags this Halloween. So let's get back into some political questions here. You ran for delegate in 2021. In fact, that's why we had you on the Beach Brothers show, was that situation. And you're officially the Democratic candidate for the state Senate seat, the 20th district, in 2023. To this point, what have been the major differences between both races?
Oh man, I don't know. I think obviously getting a lot farther this time around than the first time around, but still being rather quite difficult. They are very learning processes. I don't probably it doesn't get any easier no matter how many times you run. But oh my gosh, I can't even pinpoint anything. It's just been a difficult process for sure.
Yeah, probably even more difficult because you've been able to last a little longer. You're running for state senate as opposed to delegate, so it's a more impactful seat as there's only 40 versus the 100 in the legislature. So it's plus a whole another 2 years of experience doing politics. So in some ways very similar, but in many ways different. How about when you intended, when you intended to run with the Democratic Party? No, sorry, you interned with the Democratic Party of Virginia before. Has such connections helped you in this time?
No, I think I even prior when I first ran for delegate, it wasn't because of my involvement. I didn't have a long history of involvement in politics that made me want to run. Um, we didn't have a candidate at the time, and it was just a conversation that people had with me, and we're like, "Well, why don't you run?" We don't have a candidate yet. Nobody's jumped in, so it wasn't something I had put much thought into the first time. It was just like, we need a candidate, sure. And I have always had the view of just ensuring people are safe and we have things to ensure success and opportunities, and why not? But my history of community service has always just been community service, like volunteering for organizations and helping where I can. So there wasn't really much I was putting in politically when I ran. And then the second time too, it wasn't, conversations with the political party. It wasn't political connections that got me to run again. It was, another phone call, somebody else, which I give much credit to, Dr. Fergie. He, called me. I was in North Carolina and, was saying there's an election coming up, and we need progressive people to run, and you should run for office and try. I didn't get far the first time. He goes, try it again. And I was just kind of like, oh, I don't even know how this is going to go a second time, because the first time I don't, I'm just a regular person. I don't have deep connections into the political aspect. You think of all the reasons why you're not qualified to run, and that's where it left me in that conversation. And then again, I was just like, well, why not? Why not run? I just keep finding myself in these situations.
Well, I will admit, in some ways, I had that same version of spirit when I was running for my council races. Just, hey, why not do it? I'm also thinking back to this particular seat. I know it's a different number for the incumbent. He was in a different district at the time, but it's roughly the same area. And in that 2019 race, Bill DeSteff was outraised by Missy Cotter Smallsall about 2.1 million to 1.3 million.
Wow.
That's a lot of money. Now, for a district with roughly 55,000 total votes and a position that pays less than 25,000, that still boggles the mind, that amount of money. So, of course, back when I was running for council, that actually Missy was someone I tried to reach out to say, hey, would you like to by chance support my race and endorse me perhaps? But respectfully said no, because council race, I guess maybe I was too small a candidate or something along the lines. But that's the why not run type of atmosphere. Now, I think back to that 2.1 million. $724,000 of that was from the Virginia Senate Democratic Caucus. So I'm going to ask, are you so fortunate to be on the receiving end of our great Democratic siblings?
No, I don't think we have had that type of donation at all. But it is also because of that I'm assuming the long history that Bill DeSteff has had in this area against our candidates is why. Since the beginning of the year, it has been a big push on other races. So I think people get into that we're not trying to waste money mentality. And sadly, I think that's what happened to our race.
Could be. I really wish more people would be able to not so much just look at us, but be like, hey, that is someone I'm willing to support who has a good amount of help from Northern Virginia, Richmond, Western Virginia, just like they do for all the other candidates. For instance, I'm in a district right now. I live in Portsmouth, where that's the Senator Louise Lucas race versus Tony Goodwin. She's raised a lot of money for a district that seems very heavily Democratic support, and yours is seemingly more Republican. So some of those priorities seems a little mismatch depending on the viewpoint. By the way, I also recently had Tony Goodwin on, and when I asked him some questions, I asked him some word association based things. So if you wouldn't mind, we're going to try to do a little word association with some phrases in politics. Let us begin with conservative. When I say conservative, what do you associate with that?
Conservative mean, in my mind, I always associate it with limits, restrictions.
How about Republican?
Left or just right and left usually come to mind whenever I think of party. Like, I don't really think of policies when I hear our part, like when I hear Democrat or Republican, I just think left and right.
All right. I guess there wouldn't be much left and right if I was to bring up moderate. What do you kind of think of when you think of moderate?
I think and we have these conversations as progressives, like, and it might be our history with it. I feel a lot of times people use the word moderate to not be controversial. You don't want to pick a side. You don't want to, in a sense, put yourself in jeopardy because it might upset a side. So I always feel moderate is just such a neutral place that, just weirdly a place to just not rile up anybody's feathers.
How about independent?
Times have changed for the word independent. I usually think independent people don't pick a side. I have always had that mindset of, in like, literally, like, whatever is the best policy wins. But the political environment for independence has also changed.
All right. How about more to our side of the aisle here? Democrat. What comes to mind when you think of that?
Moderate.
Let's go to progressive. What do you think about that?
Working class.
Glenn Youngkin.
You know what's weird? I have not paid any attention to that guy. Since he's been in office, I only seem to see him pop up when it's always about controversial things.
Mm-hmm.
But when I hear Glenn Youngkin, the first thing that pops in my mind is laying low.
Laying low. Interesting. How about your opponent, Bill DeSteff?
Just anytime I see or read anything, it's always, my connection to it is the firearm safety policies.
All right. Now, from that, I would like to roll into some more policies that you would like to get into when you become a state senator. Let's start with preventing gun violence. This is important to me, important to you. What would you like to see work from the state legislature on gun violence?
I grew up with like long history effects of domestic violence, and we still have domestic violence and firearm safety. I think we could just do better there, especially with being able to do work, do something, be proactive when it comes to, as soon as you face a threat by a partner or by somebody, before it becomes deadly, as well as being able, I don't even want to say the word confiscate because that's not where you want to go to, but you want to have safety measures put in there before, people go buy a firearm one day and then that same day they do stuff. As well as,
Yeah, that literally happened in the Chesapeake shooting at the Walmart.
yeah, and I always hear the conversation here will always go around the event that happened at the municipal center, And you'll have one side people saying we could have done, like, there could have been steps, policies put in place first, and you have some people who say that, well, it wouldn't have been preventable, he would have done it anyways, which that's just such a disservice to the people who were involved that knew him and worked with him and said, like, if there was steps that people would have done to help him out mentally, or to um like, something could have been done. People who worked with him and worked in that building said there could have been steps to have prevented this. And my son goes to Green Run, so we just went through a loaded firearm being brought to school there. And, like, again, we reference back to the shooting that happened, to the kindergarten teacher. Like, what was going on at home? What were the first steps going on to prevent that? And even she came out and said that everybody had addressed this, nobody did anything about it. um so it's such a shame that you always have to wait till things get deadly, things get too you can't turn back from. um so it would be strengthening domestic violence laws. It would be trying to ensure that we do have basic steps to go through before you have to get um, to the tragic events. I know that there are, people always want to talk about invisible guns and things like that. Like, we have so many policies, from like Moms Demand Action and every town, that they're great policies that we could be enacting, but they don't get seen in our district just because they affect people's donors or they affect people's businesses, which you're already putting your financial gain in front of our.
Now, another important topic, both for you, Democrats, statewide, is protecting reproductive freedom. What would you like to do when you're a part of the process?
I think these are like issues that are, again, government overreach. I don't even know why these are brought up as laws, what people are doing in their private life, what women and even their partners are having happen to them, that don't affect us. They affect them. Those are their private decisions. I would like to see these um, codified into our state constitution, so we don't have to have these issues that are government overreach constantly brought up every other election or every year, just depending on the climate. These are such issues that are like this is not what the people are focused on. They're worried about their housing. They're worried about putting food on their table. They're worried about their jobs, and we're over here trying to decide if we should give women rights or not. Like, that's crazy.
It's a really good point, because it really sets it up for a viewpoint where there's a latent inequality. This isn't something that we have a great, um, I want to say criminalization, but regulation of the male body seems to be something particular for females. So in that instance, it would be great for your leadership and others in the Senate and in the House of Delegates to work on the matter of protecting those rights. And I'm also curious, how would you like to help create an economy for all Virginians?
Um, as somebody who has dealt with, like, well, I used to be a duty contractor, and our wages very much, anybody who has worked on that aspect knows that, like, your contract wins if you're providing services for less. So that's how most people get outbid, and our wages never change, and inflation still happens, and housing and all that still rises. So we were constantly saying we're getting more work, but why are we not getting paid more? Like, we don't understand. We all see everybody else's wages go up. Um, and that's the basic part for people to participate in an economy, that they'll afford to do that. So, slowly raising the minimum wage is just ridiculous when people need, if you can give us inflation, taxes now, then you can give us, quicker raises in minimum wage. So a living wage is something that a lot of us progressive candidates have been pushing to ensure that we're fighting for living wages. And it does vary on where your city is. It is more expensive to live up north. It is more expensive to live like in Virginia Beach than some of the surrounding cities. So it does vary on your area, but being able to participate in the economies where everybody gets to afford to be in it. a lot of people in Virginia Beach, we have so many great events. We cannot participate. We cannot afford to participate. We are just living paycheck to paycheck. And it's, then people get down to trickle down economics. And we all know that. Yes.
All the way down to the minimum. And if we could expand just a little bit on that, because the community action team, big here in Virginia Beach as well as Portsmouth, has a plank that we would like to see of the state representation. And that plank is to rapidly accelerate Virginia's minimum wage, which is currently at 12. And when Bernie was running back around 16 and 20, the fight was for 15. And we're still $3 behind that. And now we're 3 years behind 2020. So
Yep.
I think we should be fighting for a little higher than 15 now. So do you have a number in mind? You think there would be a decent right now minimum wage?
If I could, and this is, what to people would be extreme, we would be starting at like $25 an hour. And I don't think that's extreme because we're always basing wages on like this little beginning part of wages when wages expand all the way up to like the billions and the trillions here. And that's like not even 50K a year. So that's nothing compared to the prices of like housing here. Like mortgages are almost $2,000. That's not even including maybe another two for utilities and your basic necessity expenses. So people always make such a big deal because of the numbers, and it's like you're comparing the numbers to like jobs that they think that they're no skills. That's another BS excuse that they use for low skill jobs. And then they want to compare that to fast food. But, at the same time, these people are like, I expect all these things from fast food employees. And I'm like, well, you don't pay them like what from the expectations that you want. And most people won't care to work at a fast food restaurant or in an office or something if they're paid well. It doesn't matter. You just want jobs filled. But people are not going to go for low paying jobs just because it's a job. It's also a horrible mentality we have here. Is like, let's bring a bunch of jobs and they're a bunch of $12 jobs. Nobody, we're just creating more people living in poverty jobs when we need higher paying jobs. We need better opportunities. It's they always try to make it a mess of an issue, but it's not, especially if you've been in these positions, if you've been in poverty, you've been in low income, you're just like, it's not a lot of money.
I agree, anecdotally, especially because when I left what was at the time my full time job in 2021, that was only about $13.50 an hour, and it was more than 40 hours a week. And now I'm with Parks and Rec without a school time, which isn't going to be anywhere near 40 hours a week. And then I have to sort of supplement that with a couple more positions part time, and those are much lower paying jobs. So
Yeah.
15, 12. So total the three positions that I currently have right now, just to get about 50 or so hours, which I need to do because they are paying so low. So the idea of working for all Virginians is going to have to start from that level because that needs to be grown so the other ones can grow. And that
Yeah.
would help the entirety of the economy, at least.
Yeah, you would think, the mentality of the wealthy is the more money flow in, the more money flow out. But when it comes to working class, it's like you're barely directing money flow down here, but we're the ones who keep the economy alive. We're the ones who spend. We're the ones who are daily out in the economy, putting the money back in, but
Mhm.
we don't participate when we don't have money. So, and I understand the struggle too. My sister lives with me. I've had to see her go through the unemployment changes too, and we always hear that, oh my God, there's jobs hiring, and then you go and look, and they're only hiring part-time jobs, and
Yep.
there's no benefits. And then once you secure this job and you want more hours, then they hire more people to take up hours, so then you lose hours, and you're still not able to qualify for benefits. And then it was just then they would tell her, oh, we can give you a raise, but you're only going to work 2 days out of the week if you get a raise. And it was just like, what? Like, and it was dollars. It was a dollar's difference. And it was just like the reality with a lot of our representatives, if they've never been in these positions, they don't know these realities, but they are the ones dictating our financial security. They're the ones dictating our job economy. Who have never been in these jobs.
Yeah, they're further and further distant from it, at least psychologically. Your opponent, I think, himself is a multimillionaire due to various things, and um, that's not to bash him simply because he's that. It's just he would also be less and less likely to endorse the idea of raising the minimum wage at all. That could be partially because he doesn't experience what it is like being toward the bottom and then trying to live life, which we're facing higher prices, but
Yeah.
the wages aren't going up. So it's going to have to start going up from the bottom, or at least I believe we share that opinion. And I
Yeah.
think we might also share a similar opinion on education because the community action team is also pretty big on, fully funding schools, big pay for teachers, but also making sure that the curriculums are up to par on history and science. So on that front, what would be your plan to educate all Virginians?
So I live in a district that has schools that need infrastructure. So I understand that aspect of money needs to go in for infrastructure. We live around a neighborhood with teachers that have stepped away from the teaching field because of the wages and is also because of the safety concerns. Um, I have a child that has a neurodevelopment issue, and like we see with his counselors, how they need resources to help these kids stay on track. They need resources to be able to give them that one-on-one like tutoring or anything that just keeps them in focus in school. And that also goes into our after school programs, which I really don't see a lot of, which would help kids stay away from, just troublesome activities. Cause I grew up in that type of area. And a lot of it was because kids could not afford to participate in after school activities. And I posted it before. I feel like you can tell where our priorities are by the funding of our education system. And doing the minimum doesn't show our commitment to our education systems. Allowing them to like scrape by and saying that we've done enough is ridiculous. And we've even heard teachers say the funding formula needs to be changed. It needs to be updated to reflect now times, the needs of children now. Um, so there's just so much that we can take from like teachers and the educational professionals leading that, and us just being quiet and allowing them to lead their own charge in their cause and supporting them in that. But if I could, I would hope every school in Virginia was overly funded, that our teachers were the best teachers paid in the state, and that people came here for that, and that every school had the resources for every child, no matter where they are, spectrum or not, to be successful. And we even know that our disabled community of children, they don't have that equal opportunity to be in schools. They have to be out of district sometimes. Um, they need the nurses. We're short on nurses. There's just so much that we have a shortage of, and people only seem to care about this when they're running for reelection. They totally run their campaign on the back of our educators, and then when they're in office, nothing really happens. But thankfully, our campaign doesn't have special interests, so those concerns are, as a parent, important and something that I've seen, within these past years.
Yeah, you maintain your proximity to education, and you'll see, as you mentioned, where there some of the discrepancies are lying in terms of grade output, what is causing that. And I'm glad that you're wanting to step up to the plate to not only fully fund it, but to fully staff it, fully build it with all the infrastructure. You let off with infrastructure. So I really like the sound of your plan on education.
My kids are like, if we listen to our kids are like the most scrutinizers of public schools. My kids will like come home and be like, "Mom, the bathrooms the lights in the bathrooms at school, they've never had light bulbs or something." Or like, there's a lot of water damage at the schools, and when are they ever going to do something? And you can't really give your kids these answers because we have no control in that. We don't know where like this money is going to, but like it's so entertaining to hear from them because like they are there every day. And
Mhm.
I don't know any parent whose kid does not complain about the food at the school either. Like It is just it's entertaining, but like if your kids are in it, if you are in the community actively, your children are raised in this stuff. These shouldn't be hard issues to address. These are everyday issues.
Now let's move a little bit from education to some other important rights-based issues. Where do you see our current issues with LGBTQ protections in the state of Virginia? And you, as a senator, how would you like to help either protect or fix that?
This goes to me hand in hand with our reproductive rights, and these are issues we shouldn't be. Again, government overreach. This is none of our business. My view, my neighbor's view, two counties overview. That shouldn't impact the safety of your everyday life, your opportunities to the American dream. These are just such nitpicking things that people want to control all the time and want to have a say because I feel like it's such a power thing. But growing up, it was never like I never even thought of that. I never thought that that was something we were going to be ever arguing about. I felt like we established these protections and these policies to ensure that everybody, no matter race, color, orientation, or whatever, had the same opportunity as anybody to the American dream, to participate in our society, to whatever economic and educational opportunities, and just to be respected as a human. But then you get older and you see these little bickering fights about the invasion of someone's personal life. So our campaign has since the beginning always just try to ensure that we respect the LGBTQ plus community. We know we're here to fight for their rights, to ensure that they're not up in the chopping block for any legislation, because that's a big part of the process that I think some people don't pay attention to, is that you don't have to be in politics for a long time. You don't have to have any experience in this. You just have to be the person that is going to direct policy in the right way. You are going to block the nonsense that's going on, block the extremism that's going on, block the invasion into your life. As long as you have a representative who's doing that, and not saying, I don't want to get involved. It has nothing to do with me or my community, so I don't have a say or a vote. No, you should always be looking at this to protect the community, regardless if they're your voters or not, regardless if they're in your county or not. And women's rights and LGBTQIA rights are the same thing, and it's so sad to have these issues constantly up for votes all the time. You would assume that you could just leave these people alone, let them carry on their lives, mind your own business, and live your own life. But hopefully, eventually they'll get codified into our Constitution too, and we won't have to have these fights. We can leave them alone. We can leave everybody alone.
Sounds like a good plan to me. I'm also curious, how can we sort of expand, healthcare in Virginia? How do we protect what we have, but also make it better using the General Assembly to do so?
A big one has always had, and when we've seen it with the Bernie wave, was expanding, our Medicaid program into a public option program, which I'm fully behind, because I was a welfare kid growing up. So like my mom never was able to secure a job, and the children's livelihoods are always dependent on what their parents can provide. And it's not my fault my mom couldn't do that. And, in a way it's like, the consequences of your parents' actions. But like, if we really care about our youth and our kids, then we should ensure that they're always, regardless of, where they are taken care of. And it doesn't just stop at kids, it's adults, it's our elderly. It's the people who get laid off, you lose your health care. And I just think it's unfair and unnecessary for you to constantly be relying on a job to have that need taken care of, when you can just have an option, a public option to pay for, that you don't need to have tied to a job. And a lot of those obstacles are just like the like, it doesn't get funded as much because, people just want to get people off Medicaid, which is just ridiculous. Certain medications aren't covered because it's that type of other program. It's always in competition with private. if you cared about taking care of people, you just ensure that they have the opportunity to do that themselves, and not always have to rely on a job. Um, but yeah, we have great endorsements too from a few political action committees for healthcare. So going through what they bring to the table in these conversations we've had, if you've ever gone through this stuff, you're just like, I feel like these are the things we can get rid of, basic stuff, to help people out. But yeah, being able to just ensure, a lot of people also got kicked off after COVID, which
Mhm.
was like, there's a need, so it's not like we don't need it, but there is a need.
I would like to give you your flowers on the matter. Would you like to name those endorsements?
Oh man, there is so many. Let me not be negligent and forget those. Because when you get them, it's so exciting, and then you're just like, oh wait, here's another one. Mm-mm-mm. We have got the Care for VA, the Committee to Protect Healthcare,
Mhm.
which was a great one because it always depends on the candidate. You'll have some progress in the healthcare field, and then depending on who your next candidate is, sometimes those get rolled back. Um, so we want to obviously protect the progress we're making. We also have a majority of the reproductive health endorsements, like Row Your Vote and Planned Parenthood and Vote Pro Choice. And a lot of people, overlook that Planned Parenthood is only for what they want to say is abortion care, but it's not true. Um, I've had friends and family members who have used Planned Parenthood for strictly healthcare. I had a friend that had a breast cancer scare, and she went to Planned Parenthood, and they took care of it for her because she couldn't qualify for Medicaid, and she wasn't able to get medical insurance with her job because she was part-time, less than part-time, and they weren't able to give her benefits. So you have to give like, as much as people don't pay attention, Planned Parenthood is a big healthcare provider that often gets overlooked for just one of their services.
Now, the community action team also included a plank for its state reps, either incumbents or challengers. It's regarding incarceration, the criminal justice system. We would like to see the legislators reduce nonviolent drug offenses. So, can we expand on that and other criminal justice reforms with your candidacy?
Yeah, criminal justice is an important issue on our platform. I grew up with a majority of my family members in jail or incarcerated for long periods of time, um, even my siblings. And we saw both sides of incarceration, and we saw very deep, troubling issues with incarceration and the services that they have. Um, and a majority of them were because of their addiction. And I just have never seen how somebody struggling, your solution is to incarcerate them. Um, there are worse crimes out there, and you don't solve anything by locking these people up when, and honestly, they just need health care and mental health care. They don't need to be locked up with other people who are in the mentality that they're not gonna they don't want to kick this habit, or um, they make more connections in there. I know, some of my siblings have met different things there, and got into even worse stuff because of being in that environment. And it's not healthy for people. Most of the time, people in addiction are struggling with employment, or they're struggling with family issues, or they're struggling with sexual abuse. They're struggling with such greater issues that incarceration isn't the answer. And in any of the mindset, I would just hope nonviolent crimes weren't sent to jail, period. Um, just because that's not a solution. If you're not trying to if you're not trying, for me, that's like where you're starting to go into like a police state. You're starting to go where the government is controlling everything, and you can't do anything, and you're just going to go to jail for everything. So that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help your employment opportunities. It doesn't help your education opportunities. It doesn't help you, solve your addiction problem. It's just such a I don't know, it's such an old way to look at solving these problems when and a waste of our resources too. Um, when these things could have been solved with access to healthcare.
Actually, it's a very good, concise way to end it. That this entire time, this could have been solved if they and all of us had adequate access to inexpensive but quality healthcare at the same time. A lot of the other things that cost so much money for the state of Virginia wouldn't even need to happen.
Yeah, and it's everybody always says the cost, and yeah, it might cost a lot up front, but in the long haul, it's you're gonna solve half the problems there, and it's not gonna be expensive. And even so, our money gets put into like other stuff that's ridiculous. Um, but I'm the first in my family not to have to deal with like substance abuse addiction, and I saw that stuff growing up, and I just remember thinking like, so many people in this community don't have the skills to adult. They don't know how to. They don't have the skills to cope with addiction. They don't have the skills to handle their emotional, mental, um, just wellness. So they solve their problems with escaping their problems. When they have healthcare problems, they turn to addiction to get over the pain, to get over the mental anguish. So it's yeah, that just just is such a think of it like back in the day with Reagan, where everything was solved in the poverty level with jail. No, thank you.
Good point. Good point. I'm also curious because you would like, as you phrase it, to help immigrants in Virginia thrive. How would you like to see the General Assembly work on that?
So we have, a lot of people think of immigrants and they only think of Latin American immigrants, but Virginia Beach or Virginia itself, is home to many immigrants from many communities, not just Latin America. And some of the things that we talked about were the transition into the American life to here in the U.S. often leads them into medical debt, into dangerous situations because language barriers, them getting taken advantage of, um, losing their life because they just don't have a way to transition into here. It's a different way of life. Um, the basic stuffs would be helping them with language, and one of my friends told me language resources here only go so far. Like they teach you basic statements, but to be able to navigate through healthcare or to navigate through a job or to navigate through everyday life, you have to pay for that stuff. And most people would go to college to get those resources, but you cannot attend college if you don't have citizenship or a visa yet. And those are waiting processes. Like some people have to wait 2 years or even more to even go through that process. So while they're waiting for just that, they can't learn the language, they can't get a job, they can't have healthcare. And often they're relying on nonprofits, but again, they don't have that information. There is no connection to what resources they have available, um, to help them navigate stuff. And oh my goodness, if we're all struggling with housing, think about being here and not knowing the language and not knowing anything, and then you have to find housing. So oftentimes, our immigrants communities lose their lives because the transition itself is just unnecessarily hard. And we're a melting pot of cultures. We have so many different neighbors. The military community brings so many different people from around the world. Our government agency brings people from all over the world. And it shouldn't be so difficult to transition here. It shouldn't be a life or death for some of these people coming here. And we also did face the issue with child labor in the Eastern Shore, where kids are getting harmed in factories. And that was another thing. It was just like, why are we creating so many obstacles uh, for our immigrant community when we should be trying to figure out how to prevent all these bad things, prevent all these accumulations of debts and all this, if we can just help them out with the resources that they need. And it's not taking from anybody else. It's just providing what is necessary for transition.
I would really want to underline that as well, in agreement, because a lot of this sort of animus toward immigrants in general, primarily toward Latin America when it comes to United States aversion to immigrants, is the belief, suspect belief, that it's taking from a fixed pie. It's not. We're all able to, you know, live and enjoy ourselves in this great American country, in this state of Virginia, because it's ever growing, because our presence is here. And scoffing at people is, it's not good. It's anti-American, I would say. And on in terms of expanding to as many people as possible, I've also noted that you have a willingness to want to expand accessibility for all. Could you touch on that one too?
Yeah, so I have a nephew that has spina bifida, and he has a severe form of spina bifida. So he has no function or no feeling in a way. He's paralyzed from the chest down. Um, and we've always seen an issue with accessibility for our handicapable community, because we don't think about it as much as you, just not having to think about participating in going to the grocery store and going to school and getting in and out of your home, going in and out of the bathroom. Um, you're not noticing that you are not noticing your accessibility. So seeing him, he's now middle school, seeing him and seeing his community, because he also has, he's connected to his community here of children and adults, and just seeing like the basic stuff. So like you think about it right now, do you see the, everyday accessible, restricted people at Walmart? No, you don't. They don't have shopping carts for them. They don't have like, groceries are not at their level to be able to participate in everyday life. And then you go to school, like, do they have the safety measures to walk or, have, you know, access to go to school nearby? Most of our kids have to go to a school that's out of our area. They have to travel to a school that has those resources, because not every school, um, works for them. And then, we have the healthcare was just another one, seeing how there's a shortage in nurses all around, but there's also a shortage for no nurses for home care. And then, you break it down more, nurses, for our handicapable community too. His mother had such a difficult time because she needed a nurse there, for when she wasn't able to be there. And, he's trying to learn his how to change his catheter, or his, stuff. And there's only so much that if you want somebody working full time and you want them to, like, be participating in the job force, there is a sacrifice for your children in that aspect. Um, so it was seeing that, like, we do not have that. When they build apartments, they don't think about accessibility for everybody. Putting an elevator and a ramp is not the only accessible things that we have here. You can make apartments that are fully functioning for them. Every school could be a school for everybody. Even, being able to learn sign language, and I would love for that to be a basic necessity of education, is that everybody learns sign language. As as long as you're learning how to read, because you're able to connect more people and ensure that they can participate more. um, so it is very surprising that you don't really think about it, but at the same time, it's such an easy way of life. That's why you don't, because you don't have restrictions. So we could do a lot more. We could be doing just in transportation, and the way that they participate in basic, tasks that we do. Um, Making sure that the things that to adapt their homes isn't such a pain in the butt. Like, even that, even to get, like, ramps to his home and around his house, has just been another fight. So these shouldn't be hard. People shouldn't be struggling for things that are out of their control.
I would agree. I would definitely agree. Two little topics that I would like you to touch on right before we head on out tonight. Also important to the community action team, and that is the concept of low cost unit ratios in housing developments, and that's part of affordable housing, and food deserts, trying to expand food opportunities to eliminate food deserts. How much you want to work with that, those set of issues.
So when we talk about housing, anytime I have conversations of housing, a lot of times it goes with, the zoning for the city. And what your city allows and doesn't allow, and what falls under certain guidelines when it goes into building houses, and when it goes into building apartments and stuff. And you also have to think about being in the area that we are. It also depends on like the developers and their relationships to the city and anybody else around here. Um, I would like to see, more affordable housing. Obviously, I would love to see a lot of these abandoned buildings, reused instead of going and building in a place that's flooding, and you're only adding more traffic to these areas. The reuse of what we already have built on, expanding what we already have built on. People were talking about, you know, building apartment complexes above grocery stores, and those are extra, housing benefits for people who can't like those that have the transportation to go there. But at the same time, you're going to have a competition for the people who have money, and they're going to want to have those luxury apartments that are associated in that way. So you always have to, I feel like you always have to think of the good and the bad when it comes into these things. But a majority of the time, these are going to come down to who are your city officials, and if they're even willing to work with people into changing those zoning policies, and how it's going to affect the city dollar too. Um, that one is such a mess, and I would probably want to see like what organizations around here for affordable housing, what their plans are, and work with them to progress those plans, and to try to see how we can connect them to the local level and see how we work there. And a lot of the times too, it's informing our neighbors so that they fight for these things, like how we did with the wetlands.
Hmm.
Local movement. um, I feel like you protest, you show up, you're going to get what you want, because it's what the people want. And then the other one was food deserts. I grew up on food stamps. I was a welfare kid. You know, I relied on school lunches. I grew up in like a very rural area that is more rural than Eastern Shore. So like you had one store, one like liquor store that had a little bit of groceries, and you had to travel 30 minutes to 20 minutes away to find, like Vons or something, which is another major grocery store like Kroger's. And yeah, it was like your parents aren't around to take you anywhere. So the kids suffer a lot more in this aspect because we don't have cars. We can't just drive to a grocery store to go buy food. We don't have jobs as like, 10, 11, 12-year olds. We can't just go to, 7-Eleven or something. So they do affect that, but it doesn't mean that like adults are left out of this and our elderly are left out of this, because it also is like the lack of connection into to like, some people say the elderly community's forgotten, and oftentimes they won't have access to food that way or transportation, and they sadly get neglected. And adults too. A lot of adults, you just feel like I'm old enough to be able to do this, and I can't. And how do I ask for help without you know, mentally exhausting myself even more. Um, and even in the Eastern Shore, they rely on, I believe it was like Purdue and Tyson to have food banks sometimes. But just because you have a food bank once in a while doesn't mean that, we don't have a food shortage problem, doesn't mean that we need access to food. And we were talking about the affordability of food too. And I would like to see if we could expand the SNAP benefit program to include more families. And there was periods of time where, some of us who had children in public school, we were getting like the child SNAP benefit over the summer and like during COVID and stuff. And that greatly helped so many families. I just remember hearing my neighbors and my friends going, "Oh my God, like it's $200, or it's not even $200, but it's so helpful because you could just get basic stuff to just feed people." Um, so I don't think that we need to always rely on nonprofit organizations because, they also lack resources. They don't have the funding as much as a state could come in and help and solve these problems. Yeah, food shortages shouldn't be an issue, and I'm surprised that we're still facing them. And I've gone through it. I got laid off late last year, and I had to apply for social services, and I was laid off, and I was told I made too much, and I was just like, "What? What? I was just like, that makes no sense. But a lot of families rely on Snap and Wick because there's no other way.
Now, lastly, I would like you to sort of expand on how Virginia Beach citizens mainly were able to keep in touch with your particular campaign. Where they can they go to sort of watch your day to day, learn from you, so on and so forth.
So I'm still not a big social media person, just because anytime you post anything good or bad, especially on a candidate page, you will just have people who come and make just weird comments. They make threats. Um, when the best solution would have been just to mind your own business and carry on your own day. Um, so I'm not a big poster, but I do respond to emails all the time. I do respond to Facebook messages and comments, if they're engaging. So you can get a hold of me anyway. People even call and text my phone and I respond. Lately, we've been doing texting campaigns. So I've been, reaching voters that way. In the beginning of the year, we're reaching people through endorsements because they get to share their platform and they have more of a following than we do. But yeah, social media and email and on my website is a direct way to get me. You're not talking to a staffer. There's no staffer. There's no volunteers. You're talking to me.
Good. We as citizens like the idea of politicians being a little bit more not only approachable, but just willing to engage. It's pretty much the main thing we want is just to be able to be heard, listened to, and engaged. I thank you for being willing to do that, to discuss topics that are important for you while you're running. And I guess I'm just going to wish you a great Halloween evening, Miss Victoria.
I know, one more week and I'll hopefully stop growing white hairs.
Yes. Well, hope you have a great evening. I'll catch you next time. Now, we're at the end of the SchezzWho program, and I thank you so much for coming on and watching as I spoke with State Senate candidate Tori Luevanos. Remember, Helen's Home Style and Barbecue, and don't forget Charlie Roy at Selling Volkswagen in Greenbrier. Connect with Charlie Roy at cschez@verizon.net and set up your next appointment. Additionally, this SchezzWho channel will love for you to like this video, comment on this video, share it around. Definitely subscribe to this channel. Keep up with the channel and watch the next great SchezzWho episode with me, Conrad Schesventer. And lastly, have a great and happy